YouTube is live. We're just waiting on Facebook. Come on, Facebook, you can do it. There we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. We're going to be kicking off the first Polite Society podcast in several weeks. Thank you for being patient with us. Tonight's guest is going to be Chris Cheng. We're waiting for him to sign on. We'll be getting the show kicked off here in just a second. Let's see here. Go to my show notes. I think I'm ready, guys. My team, are we ready to go, folks?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Okay.
Make it so, number one.
Right. Here we go. We are kicking off in 5, 4, 3.
Hey, gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, June 21st, 2021. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morris, and on tonight's show we'll talk with Chris Cheng about minorities deciding to defend themselves.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about Judge Benitez coming through again.
I'm Amy Dillon, and we'll talk about David Chipman's nomination to the ATF being on hold. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 586 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and welcome back. This is, if it's Monday, well, it could be, and today it actually is the Polite Society podcast. Been a few weeks since we've been on the air. I've spent a couple Mondays in the hospital, and it's really hard to do this from a hospital bed. Rob, what have you been up to since the last time we've been on the air, man?
Wow, compared to being in a hospital bed, my life is easy. I'm still in flood recovery. I do have contractors coming in. I was even able to record some episodes of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I carried every day. John, I hope your life is getting back to normal after COVID.
Well, my life has been much easier than either of yours, it seems. While it's been a while since I've been on the show, I'm now finally allowed to actually meet in person a limited number of my clients, which is nice. The only downside is I have to look respectable. I have to wear nice clothes. I have to wear real shoes instead of sneakers or sandals or bedroom slippers. I can't just wear a t-shirt and shorts anymore. Other than that, I've been blogging as usual. I have submitted comments on both the ATF rulemakings, and we encourage all our listeners to do so. The more the better. If you don't feel like you can write one yourself, go to GOA or gunowners.org. They've got pre-written ones. Use that. The only thing I would say is don't be rude, crude, and unattractive, or it's just going to be dumped. So, Amy, how about you?
Well, fortunately, unlike Paul or Rob, I haven't been in a hospital or dealing with flood issues, so I wish you guys both luck in getting back to recovery on that. But like John, it's been a while since I've personally been on the show. I feel like ever since things started opening back up, my schedule has just really been on hyperspeed. The last 3-gun match I attended, that was a while ago, but that was for the DC Project. That was a very successful event. I've been on the road a lot, actually, in the past 2 months. two biggest news stories I guess I can share about myself is that I recently hosted, created, and co-produced a TV docuseries about military women. It's called Women in Combat, and it's going to be airing on the Pursuit Channel on July 4th. And then this week, I'm traveling out to Las Vegas for the Concealed Carry Expo that's happening this weekend, June 26th through 27th. I'll be teaching some concealed carry seminars, and I'll also be manning a few booths there. So if you're in the Las Vegas area, I encourage you to visit ccwexpo.us to get more information on that.
Wow. Okay. You've been a little busy.
I've been extremely busy. I've been tired, but Dave, I have to credit Dave, my fiance, for putting up with me the past 2 months because I know I've been very difficult to deal with. I've been very stressed out.
Okay. Well, have
you been channeling your inner drill instructor?
I actually, you'll see some of that on the show if you check that out.
We get the Pursuit Channel, so I will check it out.
Absolutely.
Paul?
I believe we get that as well. And July 4th, I should be all done with all my stuff by then, and I'll get into that here now. For those of you, I do not remember, and that's part of my stroke. I don't remember how many times we've been on the air recently, but I know it's been at least a few weeks. My memory kind of comes and goes. I know last week we were supposed to be on the air, but I was in the hospital back in April, I had a stroke, and since then I've been having repeated cardiac events. I had at least one heart attack, and I've been having repeated chest pain problems, ending up in the hospital, and have had stents put in. I've had all kinds of stuff done to me. I feel like I'm a Borg now, more machine than human, but they've got me still going. So I apologize for not being on the air recently, folks. I know it's been a while. Hopefully now, what's coming up for me is not the day after tomorrow, but a week from that, on the 30th. I go in, they're going to be doing surgery, they're going to be clearing out my carotid arteries where there's currently, my left one has a 70% blockage. They're going to be clearing that out, so hopefully no more strokes going forward. And they're going to be clearing out the right, which is not quite 70% blocked, but they figure as long as they're doing it, they might as well prevent all future strokes, at least for a while. That combined with my beautiful wife Susan saying, you are changing your diet and you are going to be going to do some exercise on a daily basis, my life has kind of turned upside down a little bit. So that's kind of what's gone on with me. We did have a Mag 40 come up here early June. We had the Mag 40 here in Sioux Falls, Masada, and Gail Pepin came up along with a bunch of my friends, and a whole bunch of really great people came up, and we did the Mag 40. And I've got to say, even with my stroke, I wasn't able to attend a whole lot of the class, and the only thing I was able to shoot is a qualifier, so I shot it cold. But I was able to do, even after my stroke, I was able to shoot a 277, which I am incredibly proud of. And even better than that, I was told by one of my heroes and mentors that he thinks I'm absolutely still safe to carry. And so that is one of the proudest accomplishments I've ever had. So, all right, we've got all kinds of comments coming in. We'll be getting to some of those very shortly. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and commenting. What I want to do right now, though, we've got our guest, Chris Cheng. He's already checked in. He's waiting for us to get to him. I want to jump to our first break, and then we're going to get to Chris. He recently was on the cover of Recoil magazine, and there was a bit of a stir because of it. I don't know why, but we'll be talking to him about that. And we'll be getting to that right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
All right, joining us today, Chris Cheng. Chris has been on the air with us before, and you should know him. He is the Season 4 champion of Top Shot. I got to say, I've watched all of Top Shot. I never watched it until after the whole thing had wrapped up, and I happened to catch that it was available on Amazon Prime Video. And so I went back and I watched them. And I got to say, that Season 4, the season that Chris won, when it got to the finale, Chris, that was incredibly close. When you were in the finals, you were behind until the very last second when you tied it up and then won. I cannot believe how close that season was, man. Oh, I don't have your audio. I don't know what's going on.
That's because
there we go.
I'm muted.
Oh, okay.
It's all my fault. This is a me problem, but yeah, that's what makes really great competition, right? When it's just nail-bitingly close, and for me to kind of have to maintain that level of focus to push through and hit my final targets to the very end. It was an unforgettable experience, and I'm very, very incredibly thankful for my Top Shot experience on the show.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit. You're making news in the Second Amendment community again, and I really don't think you should be. Simply because you were featured in Recoil magazine, and deservedly so. And I don't think that's news making in and of itself, but when they put you on the cover, there seemed to have been a little bit of a stir and a little bit of pushback. And I guess I don't see a problem with the cover that they put out there, but some people did. What's going on there, man?
Yeah, so I'm really honored to be on the cover of Recoil magazine, which has been a publication in the gun community that has stood for not just LGBT advocacy, but diversity and inclusion across the whole kind of spectrum, whether we're talking about women or different ethnicities, religions, etc. And so, the cover, the controversy spans a multitude of issues, everything from homophobia to bigotry to wokeism to pandering, and it's just kind of incredible to see the negative response, right, that came from some what I consider some pretty dark corners of the internet. But one thing that's been interesting about the controversy is taking a step back and looking at the number of likes on Recoil's Instagram page with this particular post. It's one of the most liked posts, right, for any magazine cover, right, posting that Recoil has done. And so I think there's this silent majority that is incredibly supportive of what Recoil is doing in terms of supporting the Second Amendment and advocating that the Second Amendment is for everyone, regardless of your background or where you where you live in the country, or whether you are gay, bi, trans, or anything in between. So it's been I think on the one hand discouraging to see some pretty vile comments come from the gun community, but on the other hand, it's been incredibly inspiring to see the amount of support coming from the gun community really understanding the message that I and Recoil are trying to send, that the Second Amendment is for everyone. And so I've been also incredibly heartened to see that the level of vocal support for the magazine cover.
Yeah,
So, Chris,
go ahead, Amy.
oh no, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it a special cover that was done for Pride Month? Was that the controversy? Because I started reading some of the comments, and I think it was people were, rude comments were about it being Pride Month and the colors or the rainbow. Was that accurate?
Yeah. So I guess what's sort of interesting is, this issue of Recoil, that I'm going to be in is actually not in the June issue, which is, June is LGBT Pride Month. This, I think, is going to be the August or maybe July issue. I think it's actually going to be August. But, the fact of, the timing, right, of the cover, definitely ignited. Yeah, and I guess, Amy, you bring up a good point, right? There was a whole nother kind of separate set of criticisms around the shirt that I was wearing. And here, actually, I brought it here for the interview. So you can see it is a distressed American flag with the LGBT, rainbow flag colors. And, the comments were interesting because it's like, look, if you're going to start citing U.S. flag code and proper uses of the flag, well, you got to be consistent, right? And then you got to go out. Then you have to be against, thin blue line flags or any other kind of adulteration of the U.S. flag design. But it's also like, look, there are so many different T-shirts and hats and apparel where the U.S. flag, right, has been a part of. I don't know. It's like, when I barbecue for 4th of July, I've got U.S. flag shorts that I love wearing, right? And I guess for me, a lot of the criticisms about the flag shirt sounded a lot like veiled homophobia to me. And if you look at the comments, you would get a better idea of what I mean by that. So but Amy, to your point, right? The timing of the post. Right, and coinciding with LGBT Pride Month, that definitely triggered a number of commenters. And to address that concern, I get it with respect to the whole kind of wokeism movement and kind of corporate pandering, where you have some companies that they just sort of throw a rainbow on it and say that they support the gay community when they really don't, or they just do for 1 month a year. But Recoil, this isn't a one-time thing, right? This isn't Recoil pandering to the gay community, just throwing a rainbow on it. They have been supportive of the LGBT community since the start of the magazine, and so they featured me back in 2013, where I talked about being gay, and I've been subsequently in the pages of Recoil magazine a number of other times, right? So Recoil has been advocating for Second Amendment rights for the LGBT community and the Asian community and Latino and Black, and all Americans ever since the start of the magazine. So any kind of criticism that they're getting that Recoil is somehow pandering to the LGBT community is just patently false, because they have the track record that backs up their consistent advocacy of this issue.
Well, I wanted to bring. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Go ahead, and then I want to get a couple comments in when you're done, Amy.
I wanted to bring that part up because I'm wearing a T-shirt right now that has a distressed American flag on it. For those of you that see our video, and I've never received a comment about it. So when I saw the comments that Chris was receiving for his shirt, I thought it was very inappropriate, and I thought this was a great opportunity to kind of open the discussion on why all of a sudden are people commenting. And I think that especially in the era of advocacy where the Second Amendment community is at right now, I think it's important that we identify those individuals or those people who are commenting, how disparaging it is to the work that true Second Amendment advocates who do advocate for the right to bear arms for everybody are doing.
I'm going to get a couple comments in here. Chris, One of the comments we got, DJ Play Nice over on YouTube said, I think the attention of the 2A community needed to be stirred. Mix it up, man, and congratulations on the cover.
Thank you. Thank you, DJ Play Nice. Yeah, we definitely stirred it up, and I agree. Sometimes it's through controversy, right, where we shine the light on bigotry and on hate. And, I always like the saying that we should all be fighting out in the open, right? And some of these comments, these bigoted, homophobic, hateful comments are out in the open. So, we know who the haters are. And I think more importantly, I think the LGBT community, we often get sort of chastised and criticized and asked, why do we need an LGBT Pride Month, right? Why do gay people feel the need to have to speak up and defend ourselves? Well, all of these hateful comments is literally the reason why, right? And ultimately, I want to live in a world where nobody cares that I'm gay, right? That people they're fine with it, right? It's not a controversial thing. I just want to be treated equally and respectfully, just like any other American, right, regardless of your background.
Frankly, the only thing I care about is, I was going to say, the only thing I care about is, do you support the Second Amendment or do you not? And that's simple.
Bingo, bango.
Charlie Chambers asked, Chris, was it difficult coming out as a gun guy? I guess, if nothing else, Top Shot did that for you, right?
In a big way.
Yeah, no, Charlie, it's a great question. And, I live in San Francisco, where there are a surprisingly large number of gun owners who are closeted. They're literally closeted gun owners who are afraid or ashamed to stand up and speak out and say that I'm a gun owner or that I support the Second Amendment, because here in the Bay Area, which is, right, like traditionally just hyper-liberal, anti-gun, I can understand, right, why there are closeted gun owners. But I think this is the point, right, of the Recoil magazine cover, is that for me, I live the life the way that I want to live it, which is to be free, right, and to not be ashamed of who I am, to stand proud and tall, and to say that I'm a gun owner, that I'm gay, I'm Asian, and I'm an American, and I'm not ashamed of any of those parts of who I am. And the more of us, gun owners, right, that speak up on behalf of not just the Second Amendment, but just, right, this is like who we are, right? We're responsible gun owners who support civil rights and the natural right to self-defense. And again, I don't think there should be any shame to it. And if we're going to win the culture war, and if we're going to win our gun rights back, we need more people to be visible and vocal in their support of the Second Amendment.
Chris, John brought up something recently, and John, I don't mean to step on you since this was your topic. I just didn't know whether you were going to bring it up. John talked about what he called a preference cascade. As you said, it was almost harder to come out as a gun owner than it was to come out as a gay man. And what that means is, oh, I'm a gay man and I'd like to defend myself. Oh, you can't do that. That's not like us. You can't be different. Until finally, there are enough men and women like you that say, no, Chris is right. He feels the same way I do, and it's okay, and we can act that way. And all of a sudden, a bunch of people who said, well, I felt that way, but I never felt comfortable expressing it. So there are absolutely step-by-step similarities in coming out as any minority, whether it's gay or a gun owner. Chris, have you seen the gay community become more accepting of gun owners?
It's a very good question. And I think this is just, the answer varies depending on where in the country we're talking about. If we're talking about in major cities like in San Francisco, LA and New York, I would say the gay community is still fairly not receptive to gun owners. But if we start going into the South and the Midwest, I know there's a number of of gay friends and colleagues who are gun owners, and it's a more accepted part of who they are. I think the thing that kind of constantly boggles my mind with the LGBT community when it comes to gun ownership is, as a targeted minority, right? There are literally people, Americans, who want gay people dead. And actually, back to the recoil controversy, there were some comments. We celebrated and honored the lives of those lost in the Pulse nightclub shooting that happened 5 years ago. And there are a few commenters who said that they were happy that the terrorist killed and injured over 100 LGBT Americans, right? So that's a pretty disgusting. It's just such a disgusting comment and disgusting attitude, right? For that to happen in our country in the first place, but then to literally have people, Americans, vocally say that they supported this act of domestic terrorism. And so, right, when you have gay people who see the Pulse nightclub shootings and they see this hate, right, and death wishes, right, thrown upon the gay community, you would think that a logical conclusion for a lot of gay people like me is, hey, if I'm going to be targeted because I'm a minority, it probably makes sense for me to arm myself, right, and for self-defense. That simple connection is a difficult one to make because I think of the overwhelmingly negative emotions that a lot of gay people have with guns, right? And it kind of goes back into some parts of LGBT history where you've had San Francisco Police Department and the NYPD attacking gay clubs. There's the Stonewall riots and the Compton cafeteria riots in San Francisco. And so in the LGBT community, there's often a very negative perception of law enforcement. Guns are associated with law enforcement, so therefore, right, if law enforcement is bad, guns are bad, right? They're both sort of can be tools and entities of repression, right, of keeping gay people down and quiet and literally, right, being killed by law enforcement, right, and killed with a gun. So trying to overcome a lot of that negative emotion and emotional baggage with more objective and I would say reasonable explanations is a hard thing to do, but the way to do it, as a lot of us know, is we can talk ourselves right till our faces are blue about why guns are useful and practical, but taking someone to the range is really the way that you can cut through a lot of the crap, a lot of the emotional baggage. And so, I take a lot of my gay friends who are anti-gun. They're at least curious, so good on them, at least, right? They're willing to go to the range, right, and pull the trigger and understand at least some component of what we're talking about with gun ownership and safe and responsible firearms usage.
I want to get a couple more comments in if I could, Chris. Chris has such a friendly attitude and great smile, yet he seems stoic on that cover. Was that intentional?
Oh, clever attack. Great comment. See, the fun thing about photo shoots, so yeah, there's a funny part about the whole photo shoot. So we had basically 3 types of facial expressions. One was smiley, smirky, and just sort of no emotion. And for some reason, the photographer's like, I really like your smirky look. I'm like, okay, I mean, that's not typically how I look, but I guess I'm looking a little smart alecky and a little cheeky. But that's the face that they chose. What else can I say?
Editorial decision on their part.
Yep.
All right. Next, and this one goes to Amy. DJ Plainheist asked, Miss Dillon, months ago you chaired a panel featuring reflections on the Asian American experience and visibility. Are you aware of any pushback from Chris's cover from those quarters?
I don't think I heard anything but positive feedback from the panel we did with Asian American gun owners. Chris, did you notice any negative feedback from that panel we did a few months back?
No, not at all.
Chris,
Well,
I have I'm sorry, Amy.
Oh no, I was just saying that was another panel on diversity that we did a few months ago, and so that's why this negative, feedback that Chris got from some comments on there surprised me. That's all I was going to say.
And one more comment.
Chris,
give me a second, Rob.
Sorry.
I want to get this one in before break, and we're getting right at the break here.
Okay.
Clovertack says, I don't think gay people are proportionally different than straight people when it comes to supporting or opposing firearm ownership. It's an issue where sexual orientation really doesn't matter. Would you agree with that, Chris, or is there statistically a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand the sentiment where I think it shouldn't matter, but I think in reality it does matter, and I think this gets us into identity politics, right? Where, right, there's these stereotypes, and they're called stereotypes for a reason. Where it's like, right, if you're gay, then you're probably liberal / Democrat, and then you start ticking all the boxes of whatever, right, sort of, right, the Democratic Party and is all about, which is obviously like predominantly anti-gun. Obviously, not all Democrats and not all liberals are anti-gun, but in the gay community, you have this predominant narrative, right, that your politics are supposed to be a different way. You're supposed to look and talk a certain way, and like certain elements of gay culture, and I mean that there's just this expectation that just isn't always true, right, in terms of, right, kind of fitting the stereotype. I don't have any data, but anecdotally, I would say that the gay community is mostly anti-gun. But again, I think it's not because that there's been any meaningful thought put into that position. It's more about just I would say the social expectations around, oh, well, if you're gay, then you're supposed to be anti-gun, and then hard stop, and that's sort of it, which is, again, like that's sort of a narrative and sort of a counter force that we have to work against.
Right.
All right, we are coming up on break. Chris, can I ask you to hang out for one more segment with us, man?
Yeah, sure thing. Happy to stay around.
All right, folks, we're going to step aside to break. When we come back, we'll have one more segment with Chris. Hang on for that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Okay, we are back. This is the second interview segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're still here with Chris Cheng, looking over some of the comments. I want to get this one in. Guns and Barbecue says, I attended a gay pride festival locally 3 weeks ago in an attempt to talk 2A and spread 2A awareness, trying to get a pulse on local LGBT community. I met such resistance. I don't know if I would be actively going out where I try to spread Second Amendment, the word of Second Amendment, where I try to evangelize, so to speak, is I generally try to make friends with neighbors. I make friends in the community, and then I let it out that I'm a gun owner and a Second Amendment activist. I don't go to the park and try to, or I don't go to festivals or anything like that and try to evangelize. You're going to meet with, not many people like it when the Jehovah's Witness comes to knock on their door and preach. It's going to be the same kind of thing with Second Amendment stuff. If they're not already inclined to believe in what you're trying to tell them, you're not going to get a great reception.
So I would add that I have seen some pretty successful approaches in the LGBT community with respect to attending Pride festivals and talking about the Second Amendment and firearms ownership. One group specifically that comes to mind is one called Armed Equality, and they're based out of San Diego. And for a number of years, they've set up a table. It's an armed equality, table in a tent, and that's a way to let people, you stoke their curiosity, right, with your signage, and they can come to your table, right? They come to the armed equality table, right, and now you've got the captive audience because they're interested, they're curious, or maybe they're confused, right? It's like, wait, right? What is this gun? Why are there pro-gun table at this Pride event? But Armed Equality has had a lot of success with their tables at Pride events and having a lot of people come up to the table and inquire about why is gun ownership amongst the LGBT community relevant and important, and how can they learn how to go shoot? How can they go buy their first gun? Right? All those those are the real questions, right, that we want to hear, and that happens, which is great. And I think, right, to the commenters' question/experience, right, I think it's a matter of approach. Like Paul mentioned, right, it's less of us going to knock on doors, but it's more, right, setting up the lemonade stand and hoping people will come and drink the lemonade.
Chris, to me that's fascinating. Gosh, our stereotypes have stereotypes. So if minority communities feel threatened, they cling to their stereotypes, just like everyone else. Congratulations, we're normal, even though we think we're special as a minority. And I think Paul was spot on, as was it DJ Plain Eyes, who said, yeah, I've been at a Pride parade, and I said, and Paul, I think you're absolutely right. The approach that works is, I'm not going to tell you should or shouldn't, but if you want to come and learn, come to the range with us. We go to the range this often, and it's really nice to have a friend introduce you to it rather than, having to come in and shoot with a stranger.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the benefits of Operation Blazing Sword right after the Pulse nightclub.
Right.
When Aaron set that, and it brought in people from the Second Amendment community from all around to help people who were curious about guns, and quite often we provided the guns, provided free ammo, and it wasn't like you must be armed. It was, if you would like to learn a little bit about it, here, we'll take you shooting.
Yeah, and Operation Blazing Sword is another amazing pro-LGBT, pro-Second Amendment organization that's has since merged with the Pink Pistols, and I'm on the board of directors for Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols, and there have been similar experiences with Pink Pistols, having a table right at Pride parades across the country and piquing that interest and kind of stoking that curiosity amongst the gay community. And I think the challenge that we're all aware of is that guns can be very provocative, and even just the image or just the word gun can trigger a lot of people in a negative way. And so, right, our continual challenge is how do we present ourselves as safe responsible, approachable people, right? Where people feel comfortable talking to gun owners, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we're just regular Americans who are, we all are just, trying to, live the American dream and maximize our happiness. And at the end of the day, we're really not that much different than any other American. And so I think we all eventually want, Americans to see gun owners in that light, but right, that's not how it is in many corners of the country. But the LGBT community, I kind of see it's almost like this counterintuitive wedge opportunity, right, to almost like catch people off guard, right? Because you wouldn't expect to see a Second Amendment, right, advocacy, table or tent or a gun, group at an LGBT pride parade. So in some regard, it's provocative and hopefully interesting and again a welcoming, approachable way.
One of our commenters, Boyd, says, lots of good organizations like Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols. The Seattle Pride Group was receptive a decade ago, but less so now in my experience. We need to be careful about how we approach this. Seattle Pink Pistols routinely staffs tables, though, and could often use good volunteers.
Yeah, this is a very good comment, and this is some real talk happening right now. One thing that I've sort of seen in some corners of the gay community over the years is almost what's the word I'm looking for? Let me put it this way, right? For decades, LGBT, freedom advocates, we've been wanting to be accepted, right, and assimilate into American society, and that assimilation, right, has happened at a very quick pace, especially over the past 10 years. And it's almost like there's sort of this phrase or concept in minority communities where you sort of have spaces, right, that are for the gay community, for the Latino community, for the Black community, and then sometimes members of that particular community can feel offended when outsiders, meaning like the people who they are literally trying to appeal to and right that are seeking acceptance, like when those outsiders start coming into their spaces, that can cause like a negative backlash. And so they see this in the Castro in San Francisco, where straight people are now slowly becoming, it feels like, the majority of residents in the one of the gay capitals of the world. And I see some gay people who are like, why are all the straight people like starting to take over the Castro? And I'm sort of sensing that maybe this unfortunate situation with Seattle Pink Pistols, maybe there's a little bit of that going on. Obviously, like I don't know the details, but to the point, I think the LGBT community needs to remind ourselves that back to that approachability piece, right? That gay people, right? We're just as American as everybody else, and if we want to be right, if we want to be perceived as good citizens, we need to actually be good citizens, right? And be right? Like, be nice to people and treat the people with respect, and not turn them off or make denigrate them, or I don't know, right? Think that gay people are better than straight people, or whatever sort of things that might be happening with a table like that. But and I keep on saying this, right? At the end of the day, like, we're all just people. Let's just all try and get along and be nice to each other, and I swear life will be that much more enjoyable.
We're coming up on the end of the segment again, Chris, and these things do go by really quick. You've got the Recoil magazine coming out. Is there anything else that's going to be coming up that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think I'll give the ammunition to Amy. She and I are involved in a new Asian American gun group. There's a lot of exciting things going on. Maybe if Amy has some time, she can talk about it in this episode. Otherwise, I'd love to either come back on or bring bring other parts of the leader. Amy's part of the leadership team. I'm an official advisor for this new group, and so I'll leave that little preview for people to get excited about.
Anytime you want back on, man, it's an open invitation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right, folks, we are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got news, and leading the news, that David Chipman thing with the ATF is still up in the air. We still need your help. We're going to step aside to break. We're going to hear from JPFO. We'll be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
And welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Looking at the comments, I've got people that aren't so happy with me, so apparently I'm doing my job. I want to start off by saying we've got other news we're going to talk about, but the absolute lead news story we need to discuss, David Chipman is still in the Judiciary Committee. They were going, the word was they were going to be moving late last week to move him out of Judiciary to the Senate floor to lead the ATF. And all the gun rights organizations were calling, please call your senators, please email your senators, and you did. And it caused a little bit of a stir, and it caused a delay. What I want you to do now with that delay, do not rest. I want you to, once again, I want you to call, I want you to email. Let your senators know that Chipman leading the ATF is just the same as a leader for PETA going up to lead the meat inspection department of the
Department of Agriculture.
Yes, exactly. It's just not going to work. He's not the person for the job.
If I could add there, Paul, in addition to calling your own senator, those senators that are, unfortunately, are the critical ones, I would say would be Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema of Arizona, John Tester of Montana, who all three Democrats say they're pro-Second Amendment, make them prove it. And then also look at the Republicans who could waver, such as Susan Collins of Maine, Mitt Romney of Utah, Murkowski of Alaska. I mean, put the pressure that they keep solid. In terms of the Judiciary Committee, I don't think there's going to be any Republican that will vote for him. I hate to say it, I can't see if any Democrat that would not vote for him in the Judiciary Committee, and they're split 8-8. So what happens now is if they have the vote, supposedly on Thursday, either Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell, the majority leader or the minority leader, have the right then to ask for his nomination to be brought to the floor for debate. I'm sure Chuck Schumer would do it. They do it, quote, in consultation with the ranking member Chuck Grassley and Dick Durbin, who's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He'll get a floor vote. It's whether or not he passes that floor vote. A 50-50 vote means Kamala Harris has the final say.
John, let's talk about those dynamics because they're fascinating. They will never bring him up for a vote if the outcome is in doubt.
You're right.
So, and may I suggest, when you call those senators that are outside your state, you say, you're a Democrat. You say you're a pro-gun Democrat. How can I support you if you vote anti-gun. That was one of the things that helped me think you were a reasonable politician. And perhaps those same statements are made to the Republicans involved. You know, you say you're pro-gun, but here you are willing to perhaps appoint somebody like Chipman. How can I support Republicans or Democrats if you vote that way?
I want to, and you can see DJ Play Nice gave us the number 202-224-3121. I want to encourage everybody to call that number. All you need to know is what state you live in. They'll give you the offices of both your senators. What I want to encourage you to do is do not stop there. Go to Google and find out where the senator has offices in your state. Every senator will have 2 or 3 offices in your state. Once you've called the U.S. Capitol switchboard, go to Google, find the phone numbers for those offices, and then call the offices in your state as well. Be short and to the point. All they're doing is making check marks, but be short, polite, and to the point, and let the person answering the phone know that you want the senator to be against the Chipman nomination.
Mm-hmm. Or if you don't want to go to Google, go to Senate.gov.
Yes.
And it'll list all the senators by state, and their websites will all give you all the 4 or 5, 3, however many district offices.
Exactly. If the old saying goes, vote early, vote often, referring to Chicago. This is one place where you can make your opinion known, and this is very nearly the same thing as a vote. If you can call the U.S. Capitol switchboard number and call the 3 or 4 offices where your senator has a office in your state, you get to make your opinion known somewhere 4 to 5 times, where the average Joe is sitting on their can and doing nothing. Your opinion now means 5 times as much as anybody who's not doing the work.
And in terms of Chipman, there are so many good reasons that you to oppose him. He was political before he left ATF. His wife still works for ATF. She's the director of essentially their communications department and had been their acting historian. Amazingly so to me. Neither have frozen their Facebook pages, so you can see what their stance has been on everything unrelated to guns. And she's just Tara Chipman, very strident, anti-Republican, anti-gun, pro-liberal, everything. And a blog I just found this past weekend called Mom at Arms, with hyphens in between the mom and mom-at-arms.com, looked at where her political contributions went. So how does a mid-level bureaucrat, you figure she might be a GS 13, 14, maybe a 15, and she makes good money, but has enough money to give $21,000 to Democratic candidates in 2020? I mean, that's a lot of money for anybody. So she was spreading the bucks around.
Particularly somebody living in the D.C. area.
Or Metro D.C., we'll say.
All right.
I mean, it's for somebody who's running, who's up for. He should have cleaned out his Twitter, had turned off his wife's Twitter, turned off his Facebook page, turned off her Facebook page. I mean, if you wanted to dox the guy, it would be so easy. I mean, I can tell you he lives in an $850,000 house, according to Zillow.
Wow. Well, Paul and John, might as well throw in Amy too. The guy is hyper partisan. His wife is acting as the historian of the ATF, and she's that partisan. Wow, that tells us more about the ATF than it tells us about her. And our senators should oppose not only his nomination, but her position. Wow.
And they should also support, goodness, what is her name? The House member, very controversial, got pulled off of all the...
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Is it Representative Green?
Yes, she
abolished the ATF.
Yes.
I like that.
Put forward abolish the ATF.
If we're going to abolish police departments, let's start with the ATF.
Yes.
Exactly.
John, we're getting a lot of comments, you were talking about this before we went on the show. I'm just going to go ahead and key you up on this one. We're getting comments about the proposed regulations for the pistol brace.
Well, for pistol braces and frames, there's two rulemakings both going on. The definition of a frame or a receiver is still very vague. What is substantially complete? I mean, Americans have been making guns at home since before 1776. Without government interference, it's perfectly legal to make our own guns, whether or not we're doing with an 80% receiver or we have the lathe and milling machine to make it from a block of aluminum or steel. People have been doing it since before the country was started. I just listened to a podcast today, and I think Michael Bain is correct. The goal is not to stop making them. It is to make a trap so they can go create felony. Anything that they can entrap you with as with a felony, whether it's 80% lower or the pistol braces. The ATF says there's like 2 to 3 million, whereas industry sources who actually have produced the pistol braces say the number is more like 10 to 40 million. There is no grandfathering. So if you have an AR pistol and it doesn't meet their checklist, it is automatically a short-barreled rifle under, excuse me, you would have to pay a $200 tax and register it with the ATF under the National Firearms Act. If you bought an AR pistol as opposed to one you just put together yourself, if you bought it from Ruger or from Springfield Armory or from any of the companies that were making AR pistols and it had a pistol brace, you had to register it automatically, or you have to destroy the whole thing. Not just take the brace off, but destroy it. Now, I'm going to say I may or may not have an AR pistol, but if it is more than 26 inches under their criteria, it is automatically a short-barreled rifle, even if it doesn't have a brace on it.
We are coming up on top of the hour and our next break, but I want to get this comment. It was going back to the ATF and Robert Chipman. Why does the ATF need a historian? More governmental waste. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, every agency has their own historian.
Did you guys hear about, speaking of the ATF and governmental waste, did you guys hear about this past weekend? There was actually a first gun makers match competition that was held in Florida.
Yes.
And it was for competitors who made their own, 3D printed their own firearms and shot a match with it.
Yes.
And I was recently seeing someone posted that there was one competitor who came from California. So he actually flew out to Florida, made his gun, shot the match with it, and because he had to fly back to California and the gun was illegal there, he had to destroy his gun before he left the state of Florida. So he did, and there was a post about it.
Yes.
Wow. That's
so I can't imagine what the ATF's going to say about that.
Yeah, and the key thing is we need to comment. We need multiple thousands and hundreds of thousands of comments. The pistol braces, I mean, you're automatically making anywhere between 10 and 40 million people potential felons. And to me, it is not really aimed at pistol braces. It's aimed at ARs in general. All AR pistols, and it really is aimed virtually at any semi-automatic weapon. What starts here, it's going to spread.
Yep.
And there is no grandfathering.
Well, we are top of the hour. It's time to move on to our defensive gun use segment. We're going to step aside, and when we come back, we'll hear about one. I believe our first one is from Miami, and we will. I need to get down to show notes. Yep, first one's from Miami. We'll get to that right after we hear this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant! No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
And welcome back. This is the Defensive Gun Use of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. First one out of Miami. I'm not in a position to read. Who wants to read that one?
I'll do it if you'd like. Amy.
Two men were walking their French bulldog outside a parking garage on North Miami Avenue. The two men lived in the area and were on their way back home when they were confronted by a 38-year-old thug. His goal was to rob them. He was armed. Unfortunately for him, so were the two intended robbery victims. The robber and one of the men started grappling. The other man hid briefly behind a post with his Glock. When he heard a gunshot and his friend suffered a gunshot wound in the shoulder, he emerged from behind the post and started exchanging gunfire with the thug. In the exchange, the robber was struck 11 times by both men. The dog decided that was not the best place to be and ran off. It was later located and rescued. The robber had a long record and had done 4 stints in prison dating back to 2000. His record showed convictions for robbery, grand theft, carrying a concealed firearm, and cocaine possession. He was released from his last stretch in April of 2020. The bullet-riddled criminal was transported to Jackson Hospital, where his soul left his body to meet its ultimate fate.
That's one smart dog, I'm thinking, is...
Well, what I'd have to say...
Self-defense class is how to run like a dog.
That's right. Woof.
Yeah, poor victim selection
John, go
by
ahead.
the criminal. You
You've got something you had in mind.
Well, I was just going to say, the robber was hit 11 times by both men. Their level of accuracy seems to be much better than your average police-involved shooting, especially in New York City. I don't know how many times they fired, but it doesn't sound like they missed too many times. Which, what is it Masad Ayub says? Every bullet has a lawyer attached to it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see, Rob, you want to take the... Well, we're all Florida tonight. You want to take the Lee County one?
Sure. Before we do...
Yeah.
If you have friends who carry, talk to them. There are a few simple things you can do if you're accosted that turn you into supermen and women. So, they're team tactics. Really, really simple. We're not talking about superhero stuff, but just really things that make you hard to rob. The criminal says, you two stand together so I can point a gun pretty much at both of you, and you just separate by 2 steps, and all of a sudden the guy goes, uh-oh, I have a problem I don't know how to manage. Talk to your buddies if you both carry. Really, really, really helps you. There we were in Lee County, and we've talked in the past of the companies which don't allow their employees to be armed, especially those who make deliveries like, pizza. We know Domino's is one of them. A Domino's delivery driver decided to arm himself, even though it's against company policy. He was sent out to deliver a pizza. When he arrived at the home, the residents say, "Hey, I didn't order it." Okay, he goes back to his car, and his phone's missing. That's when a 16-year-old loser punches him in the face and squirts pepper spray at him with a squirt gun. So the guy can't even afford a pepper spray bottle, but okay. As his eyes started to react to the pepper spray and burning, he grabbed his gun from the center console and shot the suspect through the windshield and drove off. Police found the suspect, and he was charged with robbery, with a weapon, and with burglary. Okay, whichever one of you is laughing the hardest gets to throw in a comment.
That's going to be one incredibly loud gunshot from inside the car.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry, can't hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really feel for people that deliver pizzas and honestly Lyft and Uber drivers, simply because they don't get a choice of where they're going to, if the pizza gets delivered to a bad neighborhood, the pizza gets delivered to a bad neighborhood. If your pickup is in a bad neighborhood, your pickup is in a bad neighborhood. You go where it is. And yet delivery companies are almost exclusively, you can't have a gun when you work for us, and that's unconscionable in my opinion.
Well, and it sounds like that delivery guy was set up because the house that he went to didn't order a pizza, so it sounds like kind of an ambush there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Paul, I think I used a similar story, not this one, another delivery driver. And as you suspect, Amy, he's sent to an empty lot, and he calls and says, "Where is it?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm next door in the mobile home." No, he wasn't. That's literally, not only did I choose who I wanted to rob and where I wanted to rob and when I wanted to rob them, here, I'd like you to walk right over here so I get to pick the spot in the dark. And that robber likewise was armed. And likewise, and like our similar DGU, this was a 3-time offender who committed his last offense.
Yeah, the only thing I see about this DGU, that it says he drove off, but then it hit me, he didn't have a phone. His phone was stolen.
Yeah.
So staying at the scene, you would go to someplace where you could call that would be safe and then report it.
And where are you going to find a payphone these days?
Well, wouldn't you drive to a gas station and say, "Hi, I've been robbed. Would you call the police for me? I'll meet them here and take them back."
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good way to do it.
All right. Well, we are a little short on this one, but we're long on the rest of the show, so I want to remind everybody that, no, I don't, because we don't do that anymore. I used to say we post each of our news and DGU articles at politesocietypodcast.com. That website is down and is going to remain down because I don't have the brain power anymore to get it back up. Let's see here. We're going to take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about who's been writing what and what's been going on, and we'll shut the show down right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, couple comments I want to get in. During the DGU segment, I have to watch show notes. I can't watch comments that much. I want to get a couple comments in. DJ Play Nice says, situational awareness is the best superpower you can have. I feel like my carry firearm is more of a shield, but that defensive weapon can convert to its other use. You know, we talk about that very often in the defensive gun use segment. Situational awareness is really what you use to defend yourself the most. The gun is the weapon of last resort. But the situational awareness will keep you far safer than just strapping something on. Robert says that Lee County, Florida Sheriff is pro 2A in the Northeast. The driver would have been charged. And DJ
I can see that.
Yeah. DJ Play Nice says, never enough time for 2A. Glad the show's back. Dude, I'm glad we are back as well. The last couple Monday nights when I've been in the hospital and I knew it was time for the show, it was a burning itch for me to get out of there and get the show going. And I'm glad we're able to be back and I'm able to do this. And so let's go ahead and the word is gone. Move on to what we've all been doing as far as writing. Rob, it's been a few weeks since you've been on the air. You normally write all the damn time. What's been up lately at Slowfax?
Well, when I got my computers back, I was able to write, Paul. Paul, that burning desire to start a show, now we know what polite society withdrawal. Those are the medical symptoms. Thank you. I hope the clinicians around you wrote that down because that's important medical information. I wrote a feel-good story. Gun owners just like us save lives every day in small ways. Sometimes it is in huge ways. In this case, one of us stopped mass murder. Guy didn't think he was stopping mass murder. He hears some shots out the front of his apartment. The guy yells, "Hey, everybody, come on out." "No, get out of your apartment." A lady walks out. Crazy man with a rifle shoots at her. The guy who's still inside the end of the apartment building takes a peek through his window and goes, "That's not right. And I can stop it." And he took his scope hunting rifle and fired one round, and a mass murderer was stopped. The mass murderer probably never knew who stopped him. You do the right thing too. What's embarrassing is the news media would deny you to think that this ever happened. And in fact, it's common. That's called Armed Citizens Stop Mass Murder. Citizens Saves Lives in May 2021. John, that was at Slowfax. I know you've been writing because I've been reading it. Tell me about it.
Well, there have been a lot of posts up since I was last on. I just want to point out a few. As we said a little earlier, David Chipman is coming up for vote in committee probably this coming Thursday. And I did allude to that his wife is still an ATF employee. Did you know that he and she both attended the inaugural balls for President Obama? Federal employees, especially those in law enforcement agencies, have even more restrictions on their partisan activity under the Hatch Act than the normal federal employee. The second post concerns Governor Roy Cooper's veto of a bill that will allow North Carolina churches with private schools to allow carry during times when students are not in school. No extracurricular activities, not during school hours, not during any time students might be called to campus. Many of these are small churches who cannot afford to hire off-duty law enforcement to protect them. As the Reverend Mark Creech of the Christian Action League said to me today, he called me up, it is just evil. Finally, if you're a voting member of the NRA, you should have received your ballot. Now, I'm going to say this is my opinion, I should stress, and not that of the show or of SAF. The only nominated candidate that I think is worthy of your vote is Owen Buzz Mills. The guy owns Gunsight. He stood up when you had to stand up. I would also urge you to write in Frank Tate and Rocky Marshall for the board. You can see how to do it on my blog. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Amy, I know you've got that television project that you've been extremely busy with. Anything else you want to plug on the way out?
Yes, aside from Women in Combat TV docuseries that's airing on the Pursuit channel on July 4th, Chris mentioned that he kind of alluded to a project him and I have been working on with some other amazing people, and we actually started a Asian Pacific American Gun Owners Association group, and we've been establishing that, and we're getting some events and some educational content coming out for that group, and so I'd just like to plug that, but more on that to come. But other than that, I've just been, like you said, really just focused on the TV show, but now so we're still in the editing process, and that'll be coming out in a few weeks.
Very, very cool. I want to get a couple of comments in here, mainly because they're humorous, and we're not quite up to our time yet, but John Petrolino, good friend. Good evening, Patriots. Great to see Amy and all the rest. Of course, we know Amy has to rate at the top there. Then he comes back with, I should have said, John, Rob, and Amy. You guys rock. Well, yeah, okay.
Nice recovery, John.
And then he comes back with, yeah, well, Paul too. So I see how I rate with John. All right.
Yeah, John who?
And then last one here. Daniel says, love watching these. Thank you guys for what you do. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks for watching, Daniel. Thanks, Daniel. Everybody who is watching. Folks, if you weren't watching, there would be no reason to do these. And so by you watching and commenting keeps these things coming out. I am very sorry I wasn't able to get to a couple of these while I was dealing with health issues. Hopefully that's all behind me. We do have the Daily Bullet series continuing starting tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time, here in the Central Time Zone. Tuesday through Friday, we're going to be continuing the Daily Bullet. I hope to be getting back once my life is a little more straightened out. I hope to be getting back to the weekly bullet again in the near future. But for right now, if you tune in 5 p.m. Central Time on the Second Amendment Foundation's YouTube and Facebook pages, you will see the Daily Bullet. And Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time, you will see the Polite Society podcast. Thank you, everybody, for hanging with me through this time. And we will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time. Thanks again.